Ich danke der Hanseiter Stiftung, dass sie mir noch einmal die Gelegenheit gegeben hat, mit Ihnen allen über Politik und Jugend und den heutigen Umgang mit den sozialen Medien zu sprechen. Hello everyone and welcome back to the show. Today we're going deep into a topic that's absolutely crucial to understanding politics in our digital age, the intersection of social media, disinformation, and political engagement among young people. In this episode, we'll explore how social media is transforming the way political messages are spread, how misinformation impacts public trust, and of course, why young people are both the most vulnerable and the most powerful demographic on these platforms. Part 1. The rise of social media as a political tool. Social media has become an inseparable part of politics. According to recent research, nearly 70% of adults in the United States get at least some of their news from social media. In countries with high internet penetration, that figure is often even higher. For instance, in Spain, where internet access is widespread, a similar percentage relies on social media for news. What does this mean for political campaigns? It means that social media is no longer a supplementary platform. It's one of the primary ways political messages are delivered. The 2020 US presidential election saw a record $1.6 billion spent on digital advertising, with much of that going to social media. Compare that to 2016, where digital ad spending was closer to $500 million. That tripling in just 4 years shows how seriously campaigns are taking social media. Platforms like Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, and increasingly TikTok and YouTube allow politicians to bypass traditional gatekeepers like news, editors, and reach the public directly. In this sense, social media democratizes access to information, but it also makes it much easier to spread both accurate and misleading information. Part 2. EU data. The Digital Services Directive will regulate the protection of European users with respect to content published on large platforms. It was approved in the European Parliament in July 2022, entered into force in November 2022, and has been implemented across the EU by January 2024. The implementation of the directive has forced big tech to provide information on the number of users they have in Europe. Thus, we have learned, for example, that TikTok has 150 million users, still at the distance from Instagram's with 250 million and Facebook 255 million people. What surprised me most is that the dominance of YouTube in our continent. More than 400 million people use it at least once a month. The total EU population in 2020 was 447 million people. Snapchat, a network we don't usually have in our mind when we think about social networks in Europe, has almost the same users as Twitter, 96.8 million, and 100 million respectively. The statistics from Statista shows that the percentage of individuals who use social networks to find out about European news on politics within the European Union in 2023 by age, according to a survey conducted between January and February on the year in question, only 12% on the European population over 55 years of age claim to access this type of information via social networks during the year in question. This proportion was close to 60% in the case of Europeans aged between 15 and 24. Part 3. The influence of social media on young voters. Young people, particularly those aged between 18 and 29 are the most active social media users and therefore the most exposed to political messaging and also misinformation. A recent peer research study found that 84% of young adults use social media regularly, with a significant portion using it as their main source of news. However, studies also show that only about 20% of this age group feels confident in their ability to identify misinformation. This creates a gap where young people are highly influenced by what they see but often lack the tool to critically analyze it. For center-right parties or any political group, this demographic is vital. Young voters will make up a significant portion of the electorate in the incoming decades, but their values and engagement strategies differ drastically from older generations. For example, authenticity and transparency are key. More than 60% of young people say that they are more likely to support politicians who engage in meaningful conversations and offer candid unscripted glimpses into their lives. This age group is looking for leaders who aren't just there for a photo op, but are genuinely invested in dialogue and inclusivity. Part 4, the double-edged sword of disinformation. With great reach, however, comes great responsibility and risk. One of the biggest challenges on social media is disinformation. False or misleading content spreads incredibly fast on social platforms. In fact, research from MIT found that false news spreads 6 times faster than true news on Twitter, largely due to algorithms that prioritize engaging content over verified information. Why does this matter? Disinformation doesn't just mislead, it corrodes trust in institutions. Like, for example, a 2021 survey by Edelman found that the trust in traditional institutions, including media and government, is at an all-time low globally, with nearly 60% of people believing that news, organizations, and politicians are intentionally misleading them. This distrust is particularly severe among younger populations, where over half of those aged between 18 and 29 say they find it difficult to trust any news they come across online. Disinformation also polarizes society, creating echo chambers where individuals are only exposed to information that aligns with their beliefs. Algorithms that prioritize engagement reinforce these bubbles, leading to more division. When center-right leaders or any political figures want to cut through this noise, they must focus on creating factual, engaging content that resonates across echo chambers, an increasingly difficult but essential task. Part 5. Building digital literacy and combating misinformation. So, what can be done? One major solution is digital literacy. Just as literacy and numeracy were prioritized in previous generations, digital literacy should be a focus today. This means educating the public on how to critically analyze online information, verify sources, and recognize the hallmarks of fake news. Some countries are already making strides here. In Finland, for example, digital literacy is part of the school curriculum, and the country is ranked as one of the most resilient to disinformation in Europe. The center-right or any political movement could advocate for similar programs. According to the International Federation of Library Associations, teaching digital literacy from a young age can significantly reduce susceptibility to fake news. For policymakers, pushing for digital literacy isn't just a good public service, it's a way to build a more informed and engaged electorate. 6. How social media algorithms impact political discourse. One area we need to focus on is the way social media algorithms influence political discourse. Platforms like Facebook and Twitter, now X, are designed to prioritize content that generates high levels of engagement, whether that's through likes, shares, or comments. According to a 2018 study by the New York University, emotionally charged content is up to 70% more likely to be shared than neutral information. This means that posts with that spark anger or fear often get more visibility further than contributing to the polarization we see today. For young people, these algorithms create a feedback loop. They are often show content that aligns with their pre-existing beliefs, which reinforces their viewpoints and isolates them from opposing perspectives. This contributes to what we call confirmation bias, where users feel validated in their beliefs regardless of whether those beliefs are based on factual information. As a result, political discourse on social media becomes less about informed debate and more about tribalism. Part 7. Recommendation for engaging responsibly with young people on social media. What does all this mean for political movements trying to engage with youth responsibly? Here are some practical recommendations. First of all, focus on transparency. A 2020 survey by Edelman showed that 70% of young adults expect transparency from political figures on social media. By being open about policy decisions and engaging directly with constituents' questions and concerns, politicians can foster a sense of trust that is often lacking online. 2. Encourage critical engagement. Encouraging young people to question sources and seek out diverse perspectives can help counteract some of the negative effects of algorithms. For example, a center-right politician could make it a point to share resources on fact-checking and guide followers on how to identify reliable sources. 3. Collaborate with digital creators. Young people are often skeptical on traditional politicians but respond well to influencers or content creators they trust. Partnering with digital advocates who align with center-right values but who aren't traditional political figures could be an effective way to broaden reach authentically. A recent study showed that content from influencers generates nearly 2 times the engagement of content directly from brands or institutions. 4. Make use of data analytics. Social media provides data that can be used to understand the interests and concerns of young people. By analyzing what resonates most with young followers, whether that's certain issues, formats, or styles, politicians can adapt their messaging accordingly. 5. Adapt communication for different platforms. Each platform has its own unique culture and user expectations. Twitter or X is more text-heavy and often seen as a space for debate, while TikTok is highly visual and appeals to a younger audience with a preference for humor and authenticity. Being versatile in platform use allows for reaching various demographics effectively. In conclusion, in wrapping up today's discussion, let's remember that social media isn't inherently good or bad. It's a tool, and like any tool, it can be used constructively or destructively. For the center-right, for progressive movements, and for any political force, social media offers an unprecedented chance to connect with the youth. But it also requires a commitment to transparency, digital literacy, and honest engagement with the dangers of disinformation. Young people are savvy, connected, and increasingly politically aware. Engaging with them authentically on social media can bridge gaps and foster a political environment where discourse is fact-based, inclusive, and progressive. The future of politics depends on how we navigate this digital landscape today. Thank you for joining me on this journey through social media, disinformation, and youth engagement as the digital and political worlds continue to intertwine. It's up to all of us, whether politicians, activists, or everyday citizens, to strive for a more informed, respectful, and connected digital society. And thank you once again to Hans Seidel Stiftung for this opportunity to be with all of you.